This week in Arsenal, the Gunners grab a late winner at Brentford to go top of the Premier League. Mikel Arteta's men then trounce Lens to finish top of their Champions League group. Kai Havertz scores in both matches, and the English media come after the Arsenal. Let's get into it. Welcome in to episode 36 of This Week in Arsenal. I'm Sham. As always, you can follow me on Twitter or X at Shamsdale. And with me, as always, is Sash, who you can follow on Twitter at LTArsenal. And we are back after a couple weeks. We took the second week of the international break off because there's never really anything to talk about at that time. But we're back with you guys after a really important win away at Brentford, where we snatched that late winner, and an equally important win at home to Lens, even though it was by 5 more goals. That sees us finish top of the group in the Champions League and move on to the knockout rounds, where we'll hopefully take on not one of the hardest possible teams that we could face. So we're going to talk about all that and more. But first, Sash, how are you doing, my friend? It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been, I think, a few weeks, right, since we properly got to sit and speak about Arsenal. It's been quite good, actually. The past few days has been really nice. During the international break, I took a break from social media and I really wanted to reflect, how I support the club because all of us are so emotionally invested in this club that sometimes we forget that, hey, this is entertainment, okay? And when Arsenal lose, sometimes it can ruin a few days in the following week. So I decided going forward to try to change the way I view it, to see it for entertainment. Obviously, I love the club and I'll always support the club, but also just look to watch the games and enjoy the games, rather than trying to be too emotionally invested in it. I don't know what that sound was in the background.
Neither do
Uh,
I.
but yeah, I just really enjoyed the last couple of matches. Even at Brentford, when it was 0-0 after 85, 86 minutes, I was not hitting the panic button. I was just enjoying the game, enjoying Premier League football. It's a difficult away ground. You can't just enjoy when Arsenal score. You need to enjoy the difficult moments in the games as well. And this is the sort of change in mindset I made, I think, in this last few weeks, just to try to enjoy the sport a bit more. So yeah, I've come back. We're back, and I'm back with a fresh mindset on this podcast, and looking forward to going over the last couple of games with you. But how have you been, Sham? I hope all has been good with you. You were rocking the jacket before the podcast. Do you still have it,
Yeah.
or you discarded it?
So before we started the pod, I'd previously ordered that Invincibles varsity jacket that was on Arsenal Direct because it looked super cool. Also, I'm trying to I think I'm in my 30s now, so it's less of a good look to be walking around wearing like jerseys everywhere. I think there are still some outfits that you can make it work with, but I'm trying to kind of move into more subtle Arsenal fashion statements if that's at all possible. So I like that jacket because you can walk around and people can think it's stylish, and it's a very subtle indication that it's merchandise put out by a football club, which is again the direction I'm trying to move into. But yeah, no, I've been good. I've been kind of relaxing. I also took a couple days off from Twitter. I wasn't super good about necessarily staying off of it purely, but I did. I think like you, I've reflected on how I engage with all of that, and yeah, I think that's a really good point that you raised, where I think a lot of people really make this everything
Yeah.
for them, and it's Arsenal and football are massive parts of my life, but I think you do hit a certain point where it's just important to remember what you have outside of it, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and remember that you have people, and you have hopefully another hobby or two or something outside of the game that keeps you going when maybe this isn't as good as it is right now. So yeah, I think it's really important to kind of just sit back and reflect on that every once in a while. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting about the team, and things feel a lot better than they did perhaps a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. You were saying about that like a couple of weeks back. Obviously, we went into the international break and there was a lot of question marks on the team. Are we good? Are we not good? Of course, I know we beat Burnley, but still, we were a bit, I would say, uh, in a point where like people were questioning, is this team going to be in a top four battle or be in a title race? And I think the last couple of games has shown that Arsenal are definitely in for another title race. As we, I thought, had two different performances. We first touch upon what happened in the weekend against Brentford. I thought that game perfectly encapsulated most Arsenal matches this season. I thought we were the better side, as we have been in, I would say, 90% of the games this season, but without being super flashy. Like last year, we were like 3-0 up at Brentford after like 52 minutes. We were just playing champagne football. Whereas this season, there is more, I would say, a more higher level of degree of measure to the madness. So we're more structured. The way we attack is a bit more conservative. We're more calculated in how we move the ball forward. Still, I think we had some big chances to score in the game, like the Gabriel Jesus chance, which he missed, and Trossard scored, which was given as offside, but I think Jesus should have finished it. And I think we made a lot of promising situations. But still, just like most of the season, we also saw that we made our fair share of mistakes, especially stemming from the keeper and one from Zinchenko in the second half. And on another day, it could have costed us, but it didn't. And I think any rational fan watching the match would agree that on the overall balance of play, that Arsenal deserved to win the game, and Arsenal found the way to win the game towards the end. It might have not been pretty always. There might have been multiple meltdowns on Twitter at different stages of the match, which is not surprising. But Arsenal found a way. And Sham, that's my first question to you. Arsenal this season have not been flashy. I would say, as someone who's been pampered uh, with prime Wenger ball, 2007 to 2013, some of the football we played was so liquid. And I think last season, even though it was not to that level in terms of the fluidity, I thought last season was wow, it was really good to watch us play. But this season, it seems we're more conservative with how we play, but it's also meant that we defend better, Sham. So my question to you is this sustainable, our method of football? Because that's, yeah, that's, sorry, that's my Wi-Fi malfunctioning.
No worries. Sorry, what
Are
what
you?
what was the
Yeah,
question again? I you
yep.
broke up a little bit after. Is this sustainable?
Yeah, my question to you was, is this brand of football sustainable? Because I mean, now we're like 14 games, I think, into the season. We played Champions League. I think that's a decent enough sample size. Arsenal just find a way to win. We win on XG, and I know you love this word field tilt. I think we do very well in terms of field tilt as well. But is it sustainable, and how do you see the evolution of Arteta ball? Because it's not pretty, but I guess it's more effective than last season, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about how good we are going forward, and you know, I think the last couple weeks have indicated very strongly that it's less about us and more
Mm-hmm.
about what teams are doing against us now. I think last season, especially in the first half of it, teams thought they were playing the guys who finished fifth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming at us. They're trying to employ their own tactical strategy instead of setting up in a way to nullify us. But that's changed this season. I think every team, short of maybe a couple, are really, just going to try to find a way to stop us from playing how we want to play. And they're going to sit deep. They're going to press. They're going to try to kick us as many times as they can get away with. And yeah, generally the game plan is more about stopping us than it is about them, doing what they want to do. So, when that happens, it it makes it look like we're just kind of passing the ball around the box and we're not We're not playing balls through the middle, and we're not, creating that many chances. But like you said, we typically win on the XG front. We typically have the majority of the field tilt, most of the ball, and I think all of those are indications that this is sustainable, right? I just think there's a reason why teams sit back, and that's because it works, right? You look at Brentford, and that's a team that I think play pretty good football a lot of the time,
Hmm.
and they very much dedicated themselves just to packing their penalty box and keeping us from scoring. And for those of us who were about to lose it, right,
Hmm.
with us on the cusp of drawing at Brentford. Um, in the last calendar year, there's only two teams that have won at Brentford, right? And that includes our win, right?
Yeah.
Only two teams have won at Brentford, and that it's us. We've done it twice now, and I think the other one was Liverpool, if I remember correctly.
No, it was not
No,
Liverpool. It was Newcastle. So since the start of
Newcastle.
last season, in the
Yeah,
top six, only two. Actually, I think now we should start saying top seven because Newcastle are there. In the top seven, Newcastle are and Arsenal are the only teams who have beaten Brentford. And Arsenal did it thrice if you include the Carabao Cup, which is
yeah,
quite some feat. Yeah.
yeah. Ever since that loss to them, their first game back in the Premier League, we've had a really good record against them.
Yeah.
So the way I was thinking about it was, even if it finished as a 0-0 draw,
Hmm.
I would have been disappointed, but I don't think I would have been, you know, um, just beyond consolation,
Yeah.
like a lot of
Absolutely.
people were were looking like they were going to be. There's Brentford's a very good team. They're a very difficult team to beat at home. When they come to the
Exactly.
Emirates,
Yeah.
yeah, when they come to the Emirates, different story. I fully expect to beat them more comfortably at the Emirates, but at home, that's where they have their advantage. So yeah,
Yeah.
all in all, big picture, I think we're doing everything that we can for us to sustainably have the best chance of winning games.
Hmm.
It's just teams aren't really playing us anymore. They're setting up just to defend their goals. And when they don't do that, look what happened to PSV first game week of the Champions League. Look what happened to Lens yesterday, right? They get smacked,
Yeah.
and teams know that. So I think we do have to get a little bit more efficient in front of goal. I think we do have
Mhm.
to get a little bit better at progressing the ball centrally. And I do think, there is something to be said about maybe using players in a little bit more of an efficient manner. I think we've learned that Havertz needs to get into the box more. But all in all, I'm not wildly concerned about what I'm seeing. I
Mhm.
think that's just the Premier League's response to us being one of the best teams in the league now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you encapsulated that really well. And one of the points that you also said was Brentford are really good. And I really dislike fans on social media who just think that Arsenal should just beat every single team. We have no birthright to go to a ground like Brentford against the top manager like Thomas Frank, who's built that team and made them incredibly hard to beat. We have no birthright to just turn up and win such games. That's not how football works. And there are people acting miserable after the game as well, like, oh, it could have gone either way. But no, this is Brentford away. It's a tough match in the Premier League, and you have to fight. You need to go through adversity to win the match. And I think that's part of the game, and you have to embrace that. Like, the periods in which you suffer is what makes the victory in the end like really that much more beautiful. And I think that this match was really good in that sense because Arsenal suffered and they still found a way to win in the end. And how Arsenal won in the end was through Mr. Kai Havertz, who we have to speak about, because Kai Havertz is a player who's been vilified a lot by the Arsenal fan base ever since he signed. Basically, I completely agree that in some games he's not been what we would expect from an Arsenal central midfielder, because obviously over the years we've been pampered with some fantastic players in midfield who play a certain way. Kai Havertz does not probably play like how a traditional Arsenal midfielder would play. He has different qualities, and in certain games, when we were like, "Come on, he should see that obvious pass forward," he doesn't see it. people got frustrated. But I always maintain that it's still really early for Kai Havertz. And still, I don't believe that midfield is his best position as of today. It could be, but as of today, I don't believe it is. But fans needed to be patient. And Kai Havertz, not only against Man City when he came and offered something different and set up Martinelli, but even in the weekend against Brentford, showed that he has something that no other player in our team has, and that's that frame, that presence uh, to actually attack balls in the box, to win those aerial duels. And it's 89 minutes. Everyone's in meltdown on Twitter. We have Bukayo Saka on that right hand side. We have to speak about him as well, and we will speak about him more once we get into the Champions League game. But Saka plays a beautiful cross, and Kai Havertz makes it look really simple and slots home from the header. This is something I actually said in July that watch out for this diagonal Saka to Havertz. It's going to lead to some goals. And this is a pattern. You can see Arsenal have worked on it. It's happened in past games as well, but execution has been lacking. But against Brentford, when it really mattered, Kai Havertz showed that, hey, I'm not here to just simply warm the bench or be a flop. I can offer something that others don't offer, which is that box presence. And this is why I think Arteta signed Kai Havertz to give us something different, to be that presence in the box in games like this, where, Brentford are not going to let you just play through them. So you need to play and crosses invariably. And having a player like Kai Havertz there has proven to be really rewarding for Arsenal in the weekend. And he's the reason we go out of the weekend top of the league with high spirits. So, Sham, I want to get your thoughts on Kai Havertz here. Do you still believe that he's a midfielder or a striker? How do you see it? Um, and my other question to you is, do you think fans were too impatient with him? And I think it's only going to go up from here, isn't it?
Yeah. As for the first question, I think he's like a second striker, you know, and I think how he's played is very linked to how Raya has played, actually, because not only does he serve as that outlet for Raya, obviously, but on top of that, as that second striker, I think he's supposed to be getting into the box more and more, which we've seen over the last two games. And Raya kind of functions as that left center back in our build-up play, and Zinchenko moves in to kind of be the left side of that pivot with Rice, and then Odegaard takes a more central position, right? So it's all linked. So with Raya performing better, I think that has kind of had this chain reaction up the
For sure.
formation to to give Havertz that freedom to get more involved in the box and play better in that way. So he's an interesting player because I don't think he's an out and out striker, but I don't think he's really a midfielder either. He's one of those guys that he's a very unique profile, but I think all in all, that left center mid position, he's supposed to function as more of a second striker. In terms of whether people are too impatient with him, I think absolutely. To be honest, Declan Rice arrived from West Ham and immediately hit the ground running. Since day one, he's been one of our best players, and there's really no denying that. And he came in and he took on all the responsibility. He's basically a vice captain at this point. Really has done a tremendous job of embodying what being an Arsenal player is about. Right?
Yeah.
He's I think he hasn't really put a foot wrong since
No.
he's come to the club. But Rice is the guy that 90% of us wanted, right? We went into an emotional tailspin when DiMarzio said that City had reached an agreement with West Ham for Rice, right?
By we, you mean the Arsenal fan base online and
Yeah,
not
you
us,
you and you and
literally.
I didn't do this, but like the
Yeah.
collective we went into
Yeah.
a tailspin over some rando Italian journalist saying that City had edged ahead of us in the race for Rice, right? So that was a guy that
Sorry
was
to cut
very
you off
yeah,
there, but it was
sure.
still to this day, it's fascinating to me how a journalist sitting in Italy who has no connection to Arsenal or Man City is first to the news of an English player who has an English agent. Wow. And people still bought it, which is crazy to me.
DiMarzio, if you're listening, come on the pod. Tell us your story.
Tell us who your
I'm
source was.
yeah, I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rice is a guy who was universally wanted among Arsenal fans, and the moment he arrived, it's been a very harmonious relationship. Love going in both directions. But
Mhm.
Havertz and I think Raya as well didn't really get that when they arrived at the club. Havertz is a guy that he came from Chelsea. We've been making fun of him for a few years. He's
Yeah.
kind of awkward and gangly, clearly lacking in confidence, perfect punching bag, right? And I think a lot of people, you know, reacted accordingly and were very ready to write him off, especially because we saw Mount go to United and we saw Liverpool grab three different eights and cycle through them at six for some reason, and then
Yeah.
we saw Gundogan go to Barcelona, and we saw City get Kovacic, and it was basically
Nunes. Yeah.
we saw Paqueta get linked to City until some allegations surrounding him came to light, right? So it was basically a merry-go-round of eights this
Hmm.
past summer, and we did not end up with the one that most people had their eyes on.
Yeah.
So I think that combined with where Havertz came from, combined with kind of his demeanor, made it all very easy for people to wait a few matches and then say he hadn't scored a goal. This guy's not
They
worth
didn't
65
even wait
million.
for a few matches. They bashed him in the second match that he played, which is crazy.
Well, I knew that this was going to be a problem when they were in DC and the first night they did that MLS skills challenge,
Yeah.
and they were doing the crossing challenge. So Havertz was in the box, and then it was I forget who was crossing to him. I think it might have been Jorginho and a couple other guys.
Hmm.
Um, None of the starters, really, to be honest.
Hmm.
Maybe Trossard, but like it was a few bit par players crossing to Havertz in the box, and Havertz didn't score a single goal, right? So didn't get a single point for the
Yeah.
challenge, and so rival fans were already piling on, predictably. But I saw Arsenal fans even watching that and saying, "Yeah, he's going to flop for us,"
Yeah.
which was crazy. I was in the stadium when they played the MLS All Stars the next night, and when Havertz
Hmm.
scored, I celebrated a little too hard because I felt that this was going to be an uphill battle for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people were far too impatient with Havertz. And then I also want to make this point about Raya as well, where he came in. He's nothing but bad news for Aaron Ramsdale, a guy who we've come to consider something of a cult hero at the
Yeah.
club. And there's a
Absolutely.
lot of people who are upset that we're
Hmm.
gonna probably have to sell Ramsdale down the line if things don't change, right? And I think because of that, they're holding it against Raya, and they're saying that he doesn't add anything to the team that Ramsdale doesn't. When it's just not true, right? Ramsdale plays short too often, and when he does go long, he's basically just giving away possession. He doesn't play with enough, aggression and courage that we're looking for, and Raya is just that little bit better. And at this level of the game, the finest of margins matter, which is why Raya is here. So yeah, both those guys, I think there were just kind of little undercurrents of agendas that caused people to not give them the space and the time that they needed to adapt and for things to click.
Yeah. No, I think those points perfectly encapsulate the emotional nature of fans because, like, that's what I was saying, right? In these couple of weeks, I've tried to be less emotional, just enjoy the game and try to see things more logically. Um, and in doing so, what I've also realized is that a lot of our fans are highly emotional, as you mentioned. Someone like Howard, just because he played for Chelsea, and someone like Raya, just because he's replacing a player you like. And I think this is where the difference is between fans and coaches, because fans are emotional, but coaches, they are objective. They make decisions based on what the team needs, what they believe is right for the team. And the way modern fan culture is that we're more attached to individuals sometimes rather than the team itself, and no one is willing to accept their best player or their favorite player being replaced by someone they don't like, even though the coach believes that that player will actually make the team better. So this, I think, is an issue with modern fan culture, and I think obviously this is something that's only going to get way worse and more amplified with social media, because people are allowed to be emotional on social media, and sometimes they just let loose, and then seeing others let loose, it just like activity. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is glitching. But yeah, I was saying that basically with all the issues, social media,
Sash, I think you're breaking up a little bit.
yeah, yeah, my apologies. My Wi-Fi is
But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying in terms of fans being a little bit too emotional, because it's like you said. I think, and I think this is kind of like a general thing too, not just in football, but very generally across life. I think people get very attached to singular identities, and there's a lot of hero worship going on, and I think that causes people to really just latch on to their favorite players or their favorite footballers, or whoever, and it becomes less about the team as a whole, and it becomes more about just making sure that that player that person really loves is part of the winning formula, right? And yeah, it's a shame, but I'll put it to you like this: my Twitter handle is based on Ramsdale, and I'm not upset about Raya, so you can,
I think
if I can do that, yeah.
I think your Twitter handle is a curse for players, because you used to call yourself Shambi Lakonga, and then his career went downhill. And then Ramsdale, who you thought, no, he's going to be the keeper for 7 years, he gets replaced. So I don't know. Maybe you
I
should
mean,
put something around
if
Cedric. Finally, someone could comment for him then.
yeah, I mean, if if Ramsdale leaves because of my handle, then I'll do Shamkedia or Shamdrick or Shamchenko, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Or there's no one else really in the team that I wouldn't. Yeah, probably those three.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but while we're speaking about fans being emotional, I also think you cannot blame fans beyond the point. It's an emotional sport by nature. So, I mean, I can still understand if people are attached to XYZ player. But one thing I cannot understand, Sham, is people that, don't let other like fans or players celebrate, right? And
oh,
this
yeah.
is the celebration police, right? I mean, I was just going about my day normally. I'm trying not to look much at Twitter during the day. But then I
Mhm.
happened to, there was this very clickbaity headline on a video where Thomas Frank was being asked a question by some journalist. And he was like, what do you make of Arsenal and their excessive celebrations at the end of the game? And I was like, are you seriously asking that question? Because this is never asked to any other club. I've never seen such a question being asked. But because it's Arsenal, people have a problem with Arsenal going to a ground where zero top six sides have won in the last 2 years and celebrating a win which was nicked in the 89th minute. Are you kidding me? Like, I could not believe what I was hearing. And it's crazy that someone has actually paid for a journalism degree to go and then spout absolute nonsense like this. um, and this is something I will never get. Of course, there'll be fans who say it because they're trolling us. I understand that. Obviously, that's part of fan culture online. But for a journalist to ask questions like that, and for the media to be like, oh, are Arsenal over celebrating? Gary Neville was like, oh, Arsenal over celebrated. That's why they lost the title. I'd love for him to go and see how United celebrated when they won some very important match on the road to the title. They celebrated as well. This is just such a silly narrative that, oh, we are this emotional team who who gets too carried away. No, we don't get too carried away um, with victories or something like this. If at all, we want to win the game so much that in certain games last season towards the end, we forgot to apply ourselves and do the basics because we were so eager to win the match. So our players never got carried away. Our coach never got carried away. We're a young team uh, uh, who supports each other, and when we win matches, we celebrate together. So Sham, I want to get your thoughts on this absolute nonsensical trend, if I might put it that way, where people don't let other teams or fans celebrate. What do you think of this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to shout out journalists who go to these press conferences and um, recognize that it's a very privileged position to be in
Yeah,
and ask proper questions. Shout out to those guys. Guys like James Benge and Art de Roche and other journalists like
yeah.
that who actually
Artist
ask thoughtful
class, right?
questions. Yeah,
Mhm.
um, because a question like that I just think is unprofessional. To be honest, you know, um, it's you're just trying to. If I'm Thomas Frank, I'm annoyed by that question, right?
Yeah.
Not just because it's a dumb question, but also because they're trying to get him in a gotcha moment, right? Because if Thomas Frank says something to the effect of, "Yeah, I thought I didn't like it," right?
Mhm.
About Arsenal celebrating the goal, then that's all over Sky Sports and Talk Sport
Mhm.
and BT Sport and all that the following morning, and then he's embroiled in a saga, right? So I'd be annoyed because they're trying to get me with a question like that. But also, um, I think it's flattering in a way if a team scores a last minute goal at your stadium and they celebrate it like that. That means not only did you make it difficult on them, but they valued that goal, right? They didn't treat this match as a gimme. But on top of all that, we're talking about letting letting fans have that space to be a little bit emotional. I think players also deserve that space to
Yeah,
be a
no,
little emotional, right?
um,
Just like the if you put yourself in the shoes of those players, you just watch Liverpool and City draw, right?
mhm.
The whole world is talking about how you have to be in first by the end of the day, otherwise you've messed up. And then you
Yeah.
go to one of the hardest away grounds in the league, and it takes you 89 minutes of grafting and playing really well and fighting and just that full on concentration, and then you finally get the goal at the very end when you were starting to feel those doubts creep in a little bit, and you were starting to picture the headlines of Arsenal blow it again or Arsenal can't take advantage, yada yada. So I'd imagine. Oh, and let's throw in your Kai Havertz, and you've only scored a penalty all season, right? And then
Yeah.
you finally get an open play goal, and that's the winner, and you guys are going to first. That's a massive release,
It's beautiful,
right?
I think.
Yeah, you would have to be a psychopath
Yeah.
to not celebrate that, right? That could be a very important moment in the season when we look
Mhm.
back. So I just think that's very unfair to to try to chastise people for celebrating that. We're already talking about things like VAR taking the um, kind of taking like the soul and the spirit and the joy out of the game. You know, um, I I take issue with that a little bit, but why purposefully go further in that? Why purposely, start trying to clamp down on people enjoying themselves and enjoying the game and really living it. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty pathetic question, and yeah, I have no more words.
Yeah, seriously. And also, I want to say shout out to Thomas Frank because the class with which he conducts himself in interviews is wow. I think many managers should take note of that. And also, the way he handled that question was amazing. And I don't like Thomas Frank because he praises Arsenal or something, but I think he's really fair with the way he views the game. It's not like he said Arsenal were phenomenal and deserved to win. He said, no, it could have gone either way. But then in the end, it went Arsenal's way, which I thought was, yeah, sort of a fair assessment of the match. If I was Brentford's manager, I would also see the game in that very fashion. And in general, he has so much class. And yeah, I think I was so happy to see the way he just like fought back and spoke in Arsenal's favor for a absolute nonsensical question like that. But yeah, had to get this off my chest, and I'm sure you had to also. But now let's get back to the football. So obviously Arsenal going top of the table on Saturday it was, and going into the next week into the Champions League clash against Lens, full of confidence, ready to seize what is ahead of them and go top of the group and basically seal qualification. Now, many people thought that this might be a slightly difficult game, a tricky match, considering what happened in the previous leg. But I thought Arsenal, the way we played yesterday, was probably one of our best European performances of all time. Going like 5-0 up after 35, 40 minutes is crazy. It does not happen. And I know people say, oh, lawns are not all that great, but no, they're pretty good. And to do it in Champions League when you need to win, I think that's a really good sign. So, Sham, firstly, I want to get your thoughts on just the overall nature of our display. I would not say this was the sort of display where it was wave after wave after wave of attack. I thought we had very good moments, and Arteta often speaks about box efficiency. And I think the players yesterday finished everything that game. Some of the finishing was just out of this world, to be honest. And yeah, it was a fantastic win in the end. But what did you make of the performance as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the perfect way to grab top spot in the group and make sure that you go into the knockout stages as comfortably as possible. So yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right in terms of bringing up box efficiency, because that's what this was. I think we had an xG of slightly under 3, and then I think Lons had like 0.4 or something. Um, yeah, this was a game in which we just took our chances, and I think this might be a regression to the mean based on some instances we've had in which we couldn't put the ball in the back of the net from pretty promising positions,
Yeah.
but that's not the problem that we had yesterday, right? Everything that we got, every chance we got, we put in the back of the net or we came really close. And I this might sound like I'm being a bit of a downer. I promise you, if you play that game again, you score 2 or 3. You do not score 6.
Yeah,
But that's
probably 3
fine.
nil. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it's just one of those situations where, I think a lot of finishing is variance, right? So the
Mhm.
variance, I think, just finally was in our favor for once, which is nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun to see, 6 different goal scorers, see the entire front 5, put the ball in the back of the net. That was cool. Um, Havertz is now, heating up in NBA Jam terms, which is cool.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and yeah, it was just fun. It was just really really fun to like watch the guys put the ball in the back of the net every chance they got. And so now it's also nice because we have a very busy schedule coming up,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think our trip away to PSV is in a couple weeks from now, and PSV have been pretty good at home. Honestly, that's not an away game that I wanted things to hinge on, to be honest. So now we can go to PSV, and I think there's win bonuses associated with this, so we might want to win the game anyway. But
Mhm.
you know, theoretically, you could start Cedric at right back, and you could give Ramsdale a game, and you can play Nketiah, and you can play Jorginho and Trossard, and Vieira if he's available. I don't think he will be, but it's just far less pressure, and you don't have to risk players that are very important. Like I don't want to see White play that game. I don't want to see Saka play that game. Maybe give Gabriel and or Saliba a rest as well. So yeah, it's just nice to see us kind of twice in a row take care of business when we need to,
Mhm.
and make it very drama free. Obviously, the Brentford game was not exactly drama free, but you know, yeah, it was just a fun day out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thought after it became 2-0, 3-0, it was like I just didn't want the game to end, because it was like once you're winning and it's just about playing champagne football and you can see the confidence growing, players trying some incredible stuff like the Odegaard's finish. It was like we were already 4-0 up. It was incredible. I thought such an underrated goal that he scored. And what I liked yesterday as well was if you see a lot of our goals, they were not like Arsenal breaking a deep block. Lawns came at us and got absolutely torn apart in transition. And
Yeah.
second time in the Champions League, teams are making that mistake. PSV, not PSV, yeah, it was PSV, yeah, it was PSV who came and tried to play football at the Emirates, and they got absolutely played off the park. And again, Lance also making that mistake. Um, but I want to ask you this, Sham. We spoke about how teams they kind of play attacking against Arsenal in the Champions League, but what this also leaves the space. And guys like Saka and Martinelli, if you give them space, they absolutely kill you. It's not like the Premier League where you're seeing fullbacks doubling on them all the time. And I think this is something Saka alluded to in his interview as well, that they're not really in the Champions League so far. Teams have not really doubled up on our wingers and tried to stop them. And if you let Saka and Martinelli play, they will make you pay. So I want to get your thoughts on their performances, especially. And I know, like, we have to consider it's their first ever Champions League season. They've never played the Champions League before. And for Saka, I think he broke a record for most consecutive contributions in a Champions League match, if I'm not mistaken, which is, um, or equaled it. I think he equaled Benzema's record. Um, I think that's crazy to do that in your first Champions League season. And Martinelli as well, cooking. No surprises for me because I think Champions League is a competition where if you have players good in the transition, they will cook. So I think Martinelli has shown what he can do. But for them to do it in their first ever UCL season at the age of 22, 23, I think that's crazy, to be honest. And it's not something you see every day. So what are your thoughts on both of them, the crown jewels of Arsenal?
Yeah, so with the Saka thing, it's actually two different records, right? So it's Saka is the first player to score an assist in their first three consecutive home games in the Champions League, and then just players to score and assist in three consecutive Champions League home games at any point. There's three since 2003: Karim Benzema, Luis Suarez, Bukayo Saka, right? Um, and then Saka, I think, is leading goal contributions as well in the Champions League. He's got 7. Erling Haaland has 6. Yeah, I mean, I think every time you see Saka in the Champions League, right, you think back to guys like Adam McCullough and folks like that who basically were saying, oh yeah, like let's see Saka do it in the Champions League
Who is
first.
Adam McCullough? Who?
He's like that weird United fan, and like literally every take he has is terrible. Like
Ah,
I've never seen it. I think Adam McCullough.
he's the
Sorry.
guy who looks like Victor Valdez. That's him, yeah.
Yeah. I think Adam McCullough, like low key, actually like knows ball, because I don't think you can get that many things wrong without knowing what the correct answers are or knowing what the correct takes are. It's like getting a 0% on an exam, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to know what the answers are at that point. But yeah, people are saying let's see Saka do in the Champions League. He's doing it, and I don't see any indication that he'll let up. So
No.
he's been excellent. Martinelli's also been very good. How many goals and assists does Martinelli have in the Champions League right now?
Can I try to mind guess it? So he had a goal yesterday. He had a goal against Sevilla. Did he do something in the game before that?
I don't think so.
PSV is
Here's
injured. Two
yeah.
goals, I think.
So
2 goals and an assist, I think.
Yeah, so Orbinho tweeted after the game yesterday that Martinelli has scored or assisted in all three of his Champions League appearances.
Well,
So, he's also been very efficient as well. So they're both having really productive campaigns so far in Europe. And like you said, that's down to the fact that they're just getting space. You know, these teams aren't sacrificing the way they play in order to sit back and double up on the wingers and kind of shuttle them out wide and keep everybody from going inside, right? So Saka and Martinelli have that freedom to play and to get into the box and to express themselves and to just be more involved in the attack, which has been really nice to see. Honestly, I've been thinking about what would happen in the event we came up against Newcastle or City in the Champions League.
we can't
I'm
come up
not saying
against Newcastle.
No, well, I mean, Newcastle's odds aren't great, and United are going out. There's no way that they're not. So let's just say City, right? I kind of wonder to myself what would happen if we came up against City, because at that point, does it turn into another kind of tactical chess match like when we had them at the Emirates earlier this season, or is it a bit more of an open game because it's in Europe? You know,
It's an interesting one for sure.
yeah. But outside of that, I feel really good about our prospects in Europe because I don't think many teams are really going to want to sit back against us, right? I think most teams, your Inters and your Dortmunds and your Real Madrids, like they're going to want to come at you.
Yeah.
And in those cases, it's just a matter of defending well and then exploiting the transition and the space that's available. So, yeah, Saka and Martinelli have been extremely good in Europe in their first Champions League campaigns, and it's been a real joy to watch because that's just another hurdle that they've cleared and showing that Saka already I consider an elite talent, and I think Martinelli is right there in terms of also
Yeah.
being an elite winger as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Could not have said it better myself. And I think they're going to be huge players for us in Europe. And I can definitely see Arsenal winning the Champions League. I don't know if it's going to be this season, but in one of the upcoming seasons. And I can see Saka and Martinelli being a really key piece of that. But one player who I felt went a bit under the radar yesterday was Tomiyasu, because I thought he had two huge contributions in that first half, building on from his good performance at Brentford over the weekend. Obviously, Ben White has been having some injury issues, so he's not been starting the last few matches. But Tomiyasu, who I criticized in the past, saying that he's not able to replace Ben White adequately, has actually come in and played really well in the last two matches. So credit to Tomiyasu. But Sam, how do you see it? There's also talks today of Tomiyasu potentially extending his contract. Where do you see his best position being? And for now, do you think he keeps his place after giving two really high quality assists? Or do you think Ben White comes back for the weekend? How do you view this right back dilemma, so as to speak?
Yeah, it's really tricky to say what Tomiyasu's best position is, right? Because we've literally seen him across the back four, and he's been, I think, excellent in all of those positions. Even ahead of the Brentford game, right? There was kind of talk about right back maybe being Tomiyasu's worst position for us, and then he put on two really good performances there. And we've seen him at left back. I think he made a case to be the starting left back when White is 100%. We've seen him at center back, and we've seen him there for Japan as well. Looked really good. So yeah, he's I think just an excellent, super versatile player. Really knows how to be effective in any of those positions. Loved his assist for Martinelli's goal
Oh my
yesterday.
God.
I
I thought
still
I
can't
was like, why
tell.
did you kick it like that? And wow.
Yeah. I I still can't tell whether or not he meant to do that. I feel like it was probably on purpose, but
Yeah.
yeah, just whether or not he meant it, it was an excellent switch, and yeah, Martinelli exploited that very well. But yeah, I think Tomiyasu overall did a really good job. Right, he had two assists yesterday, and I think he did a very good job of getting forward, of trying to attack his man. I still think White is a little bit better at getting past the defender and getting into crossing position, but when Tomiyasu did get into those situations, I think he was really good. And like you said, there is talk of a contract extension being offered to Tomiyasu, right? I'm hearing it's to 2025 plus an option for a 1-year extension after that, which is good. And that, of course, comes amid reported interest from Bayern Munich, which I think makes a lot of sense, honestly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just how good Tomiyasu is. But it's nice to have a guy like him around who can fill in reliably and be either a utility player or even be a guy who can start for us and perform really consistently. So um yeah, I'm really glad to see him performing, and it's it's nice to know that if someone drops out of the starting lineup in the back four, that we're covered.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. But do you think that he should play ahead of Ben White or no?
No.
Weekend? No? Okay. Yeah, I
No.
agree with
Yeah.
that. I agree with that. I think some people, I mean, we should give Tomiyasu his plaudits, but I think some people went over the top yesterday, saying that, he has 2 assists, he should play over White. But I cannot agree with that. I think the better player is Ben White, and the better player has to play. But I think this is, as you mentioned, it's a good headache for us to have, and always good to have that plan B option, because last season when Ben White was not there and Rob Holding was there, it led to some problems. So I think having that depth is obviously really important, and I quite like the way Arteta managed the defense yesterday. Brought on Kivior in the second half, and he also brought on Ben White in the second half. So that was some good rotation there. But one area of rotation that I personally cannot agree with um, was Arteta not bringing on Ethan Nwaneri or Miles Lewis Kelly, and instead opting to go with Jorginho and Eddie. Now I know that we have to respect hierarchy and all that, but man, Mikel, if there's one criticism I have, you're so boring sometimes, Mikel. Like, why do you do the most obvious thing that a manager would do, which is, let's respect the hierarchy and bring in the player who's supposed to be there? We were 5-0 up yesterday. There was no way in hell that Lance were coming back into the match. And yet you opt to bring in Eddie and Jorginho, who, like, honestly, I don't know how those minutes are benefiting them. You could have given it to Ethan Wanieri or Lewis Kelly, who could have come on to that Emirates pitch to a rounding applause from the Emirates faithful, and done a decent cameo, got a taste of how it is to play at the highest level. But no, you opt to go with Jorginho and Eddie, who you've been playing every other week anyway. So that's a decision I didn't. I mean, I understand why Arteta made it, because he's a boring guy sometimes. But from my point of view, we should have given the kids a chance. How do you see it?
Yeah, I understand why he didn't do it, but I'm annoyed. And it's like you said, it's the boring thing to do, right? Because I did see someone make a point along the lines of if if you are like an Enketia or a Jorginho or a Trossard, and you're seeing a couple of kids getting onto the pitch before you do, when when the game is pretty comfortable, then maybe it's not the best message to send. But I don't know, like we're winning 5-6-0.
Yeah.
Just put them on. And if people get upset, you can just tell them, hey, like I don't think this was, I don't think I needed you today, right? I didn't want to risk you. You're important. If
Yeah.
Ethan Winery or Miles Lewis Skelly come on and they have a hamstring issue, then that sucks, but we're not endangering ourselves, right? Like we're not missing a key player for several
No.
weeks.
No.
If we throw on Jorginho or we throw on Trossard and they get a hamstring, right? That's a really important player that we're going to miss for a little period of time. So in that regard, I think it would have been better to put the kids on. What I will say, right, is when we go to PSV, I fully expect the B team, and I expect Winery and Lewis Skelly to be on the bench for that, right? Like I said earlier, no Saka, no White. I don't even think Rice. Don't bring Rice. Um, no Jesus. And then one of Gabriel and I think probably leave Saliba at home, right? Those five guys, don't take them to PSV. Take some other guys and then just put some of the kids on the bench because that match doesn't matter.
No,
So I think that's really beneficial experience that you'd be giving to them, and it's just I think it's a good thing to just drop little hints here and there,
yeah,
and we've been doing this with Winery. We've been doing this with Winery, and I think we're probably going to start doing it with Lewis Skelly as well, which is just every once in a while, just being like, "This is what it's like if you stay at Arsenal. This is what you'll get to do." So I think that's a very beneficial message to send. But yeah, we'll see. I think also Arteta likes to do things gradually because I think even with some of the academy kids he has given minutes to, they'll be on the bench for a couple games, and then maybe like the second or third game that they're on the bench, they'll come and
hmm
take the pitch and get some minutes. And yeah, but I don't think I've ever seen Arteta bring someone from the academy and put them on the bench for
no,
the first time, and then they immediately get
no.
minutes. So
And this is my annoying thing with him because even when we played Emil Smith Rowe in a Premier League match, it was only because Willian was out with COVID or he was ill at that time. So that's the reason why it was like, almost like a forced move that Smith Rowe had to come. So I wish Arteta could. I mean, I understand protocol, blah, blah, blah. But yesterday was a great time. And I'm sure the players on the bench would have understood the manager giving a couple of young academy players the chance. So, yeah, I wish Arteta changes it up, but knowing him, he's going to put the most boring lineup in the last game of the Champions League. He might even play Saka, knowing him. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, it's Mikel Arteta things, but yeah, it is what it is. He does a lot of good things, and sometimes he can be annoying, just like any other manager could. Like even City fans sometimes get annoyed with Pep. It's not that they know more than Pep or something. It's just like, come on, sometimes give the kid a chance. It's maybe again more the fan in us speaking because we would have liked to see those players. But yeah, I'm sure we'll see them soon enough nonetheless.
stop being
Um,
such a nerd, Mikel. Do
yeah,
the
see,
fun thing.
yeah, we need to have some fun assistant coaches who be like, come on, bring in the kids, but he simply would refuse to do that. But one area of where he made some good substitutions, as I did say, was the defense. I quite like the way he rotated players there, switching Zinchenko for Kivior, who I thought had a nice cameo, and also Tomiyasu with Ben White. So it was nice to see a bit of rotation there. And the overarching point is the defense sham. No matter who's playing in that back four, Arsenal look really good defensively. And I could not say this about us last season at all points. This season, yes, there have been matches where we made some individual mistakes, even against Brentford. You saw Ramsdale having those howlers couple of times, and also Zinchenko giving the ball away. Brentford came close to scoring, but it's more individual than something where the teams are just opening us up and cutting through us. And of course, it's not just the back four. You have to give credit to Declan Rice and those who are in front of Declan Rice as well for helping the collective spirit of the team. But I want to speak about the defense, and I think it was perfectly encapsulated by Gabriel at the end when he
Yeah,
makes that block, that goal-saving block in the 91st minute when it was 3 minutes of added time, and the celebration after that. Even at 6-0, he feels so good that he didn't let a goal go in, and he was happy that we kept the clean sheet. And I thought that was great to see because it was back-to-back clean sheets as well for Arsenal. Two very solid performances with different defenders playing that. And this is what I want to ask you, Sham. Do you think defense is where we're better than Man City? Because this is something Rio Ferdinand seemed to think. He was like, the reason he sees Arsenal as bigger threat to Man City than Liverpool is because of our centre backs Saliba and Gabriel. Do you think that is where Arsenal maybe have something over the other teams in the league, that defense, which is really stable, really solid, very set defensive partnership that has evolved over the last year and a half? How do you see that?
100%. Yeah, no, I think it feels like, obviously I'm probably going to be eating my words in 3 months' time, 4 months' time, but it feels like City's defense has taken a slight step back. Um, and, just they look a little bit more open. I think Rodri has become just a little less reliable, right? He's picking up injuries and getting suspended, not as flawless as he was last season. But yeah, I think, when people talk about us kind of sacrificing attack for defense, I don't necessarily think that's what's happened, but we've definitely improved our defense, right? You look at that, excuse me, you look at that unit of defenders that we have: White, Tomiyasu, Saliba, Gabriel, Kivior, Timber, Zinchenko, right? Yeah. Still have Timber to come back. And, that's a very good collection of defenders, right? Very, very reliable. Maybe the weakest link there is Zinchenko, and that's just if you're talking about 1v1 defending, really. Um, so yeah, I think, and also I think they're very well coached, but in front of them, they have Declan Rice, who I think, for my money, is starting to emerge as probably the best defensive midfielder in the world. Definitely top three at this point. And yeah, he's just one, like, just that little triangle of Saliba, Gabriel, and Rice. That's so hard to get through. That's
Yeah.
so hard. I called it the Bermuda Triangle the other day, and it really is that. And then on top of that, I think you have a guy like Raya who, is an improvement on the shot stopping numbers of Aaron Ramsdale's. Right, we had this whole conversation late in the summer about goals allowed based on post goal expected xG and things like that. So or post shot expected xG. And yeah, so I think Raya is the more reliable shot stopper. You have a guy like Rice who's just going to make tackles left and right and really solidify the midfield. And then you have Saliba and Gabriel, who I think are a perfect complement for each other. Very difficult to get past. Eli Wahi got dribbled past Saliba twice in the same move yesterday, and I think that's the first time in maybe a year that I've seen Saliba get dribbled past.
And even
And
then,
so,
he recovered, and nothing huge happened from those attacks. He got
yeah,
initially dribbled past, but then came back.
yeah, he recovered well, and you've seen these guys up against Erling Haaland together three
Yeah,
times now.
yeah,
Haaland hasn't scored in any of those games, so
yeah.
yeah, I think it's a very, very reliable defense.
Haaland
And
scored, I think, in the Emirates though. But yeah, apart from that, he
did
has
he?
been. Yeah, he scored the third goal at the Emirates. Unfortunately, I remember that goal because it left a scar. That's why I remember
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I mean, for the large
Oh,
part,
yeah,
it
yeah.
dominated him. Like
Yeah,
I said,
I
yeah,
remember that. But this season, definitely, we faced him twice. It hasn't done anything. And yeah, it's just, it's so well coached. They're such talented defenders. They're very good on the ball. They don't make that many mistakes in possession. And, when you do that, sure, you might not be as potent going forward. You might not be this all out attacking force.
no,
But if you don't concede goals, then you are almost unbeatable, right? Well, I mean, if you don't concede goals, you are unbeatable. So you'll never do worse than a draw at
no,
that point.
no.
So, I think that's part of the thinking there. And, when City came to the Emirates earlier this season, we held them to 4 shots total, 1 shot on target.
Yeah, yeah.
And that last shot on target
Crazy.
was late. Yeah.
Doesn't
Insane.
happen often. Yeah,
Yeah. So, in the meantime, you're seeing Ruben Diaz kind of get clowned a little bit. Um, John Stones isn't as available as you'd probably like him to be. Again, Rodri, I think, is making some mistakes. I don't expect City to be that imperfect
yeah.
going forward, right? They'll fix up, but I just think we're that little bit better and we're that little bit harder to break down and score on. And when that's the case, you always have a chance of winning. And I think it was Alex Ferguson who said strikers win you games, but defenders win you titles. And so, yeah, I think that's a philosophy that Arteta is very much adhering to here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And obviously, to win the title, there's still a long way to go. And one thing that Arsenal will be looking to do in the coming windows, especially in the January window, is to try to get some reinforcements in. We also have a comment from Victor Kiptu. Thank you for your comment. He says this defensive unit is a blessing. They bring the confidence and cause chaos. I think games are won by control, um, and yeah, concentration, balance to the team momentum. So yeah, absolutely. I think when you concede goals, that's not going to help the team. That's going to also have a trickle down effect on the attack, because obviously when you concede, you're chasing the game. But once the attackers know the defense is solid, they can go and attack with that much more freedom. And this is something I remember Thierry Henry saying as well, in an interview some months ago. But Sham, the transfer window is approaching, the January window is fast approaching. We're seeing talk on Twitter uh, about Victor Osimhen, interest in Victor
Hmm.
Osimhen, that he's like the primary target of Arsenal in the summer. And it's between us and Chelsea. This news first was broken by Mo Arsenal on Twitter, who's been really reliable with his um, how do I call it, news recently. And also, this was something that has been echoed by Team News, and Tix, who's also always been very reliable with these things. So, Victor Osimhen, very interesting name, not super surprising for me, because I always have maintained that Arsenal are going to go for that champion center forward. But Sham, how do you see the upcoming windows? Do you, obviously, I don't think January is the window for Osimhen, but do you think he's the guy that you would sign to take Arsenal to the next level in that forward position? Or would you go for someone else, maybe someone like Kylian Mbappe, for example?
um, Look, if you can make Mbappe happen, then like why not? But I think Mbappe is very unrealistic at this point in time. I know there's that report that came out about how we and Liverpool are looking at how to make that happen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you can make that happen. And not to turn this into a question about Mbappe, but just quick note on Mbappe. I think he is one of those players who you have to sacrifice so much to sign. I'm not sure if it's worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to make him the identity of the team, and I don't think that's really our style. Um, I think we
Man,
have
he's
to,
Kylian Mbappe. Destroy the wage bill, destroy the culture of the
yeah,
team. Put Mbappe up front, let him cook.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if we ever do end up signing Mbappe, then I'm not going to be furious about it. But it's it's one of those moves I won't advocate for. I'll put it like that. But for Osimhen,
You're more boring
yeah,
than Arteta.
yeah. He's just, I don't know. I get such diva vibes off him, and we'd have to pay him like 650 a week or something, and it cost him like 150 million to sign him. All this, not like we'd have to liquidate part of the club. We'd have to pull a Barcelona and start pulling levers
No, yeah.
to make Mbappe happen. Um, or we could crowdfund it, and I'll chip in some money. Um, but yeah, I think with Osimhen, that's the striker I want, right? If I had my pick, because I think the one thing that we are really really lacking in is the ability to be efficient with the chances we create. For the last couple years now, it's felt like we create a good number of chances, but we always need several to put the ball in the back of the net.
Mhm.
And this has kind of been a theme for a while with Arsenal, where we've very rarely had a player who you give him one, maybe two chances, bang, it's a goal, right? The like off the top of my head, like Henri, Van Persie, maybe Aubameyang, Eduardo before he broke his leg. That's about it that I can think of, right? So we really need a clinical striker, And I think Osman is that guy. But on top of that, right? Not only do you have a guy who you don't have to create as many chances per goal, but on top of that, you have a guy who is an absolute bully, right? He's fast, he's big, he's strong, he will use his physique, he's very imposing. He's another guy for Raya to aim for, when he tries to play the ball forward. And I think Osman is the perfect guy for Havertz to play off of
Yeah.
and to play off of Havertz, right? You know, I think you're going to start seeing teams subtly move back towards the 4-4-2. I think you've already kind of seen it with City when they deploy Alvarez and Erling Haaland together,
Hmm.
and I think that's something we might be aiming for as well with our signing of Havertz, right? So yeah, I think Osman would be perfect. Honestly, I think that's just a no nonsense bully striker who is going to give defenders a hard time. I think he's also going to attract a little bit of attention away from Saka and Martinelli, just because he's the kind of striker you look at and you think we're going to need two center backs on him, right? So yeah, that's the guy I'd go for. I will say, Osman isn't the only option out there. I think it was actually Freddie Paxton who tweeted a while ago that, well, I mean, earlier today that basically he understands that any top six club that can afford him is in the race. Although he did prefer us to Newcastle when they inquired like a couple years ago, right? Is basically what Freddie said. So yeah, I think we're in with a shout. Chelsea apparently are also interested in him, but I think Osman has historically been a guy who values the project and values what his role is going to be, more so over the money. So if you're picking based on that, I find it hard to imagine that you'd pick Chelsea over Arsenal. But Caicedo, Mudryk, those are things that happen. So we'll see what happens. But if we don't get Osman, I don't want to act like he's the only player out there who could give us what we're looking for. I think there's Benjamin Sesko and maybe Evan Ferguson and there's
Dusan Vlahovic.
Jimenez.
Come on.
Oh yeah, there's Vlahovic as well.
Yeah.
I don't mind Vlahovic. I think it's a very unpopular pick among the fan base right now.
Yeah, because
But
of the past again, emotional fan base. They look at what he did 2 years ago. And, yeah, we're not taking him. Come on, he's a good player.
yeah, but yeah, there's Vlahovic, there's Jimenez over at Feyenoord, there's Boniface at Leverkusen. There's a lot of different options out there, right?
Hmm.
And it's just about which one of those guys moves the needle enough, makes up those fine margins enough for us to think that the money and the wages is worth it. But of all of them, Osman would be my first choice, just because he's hitting prime age.
Yeah.
He's performed at a very high level, at a very elite level of the game, and I think he's the one who's very proven at this point in time. So
Yeah.
hopefully we get him. I would love if we sign Victor Osimhen. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm still a bit conflicted because I think Evan Ferguson, I think, has a higher ceiling than Osimhen. I think he's an extraordinary talent. But again, as you mentioned, it's also about the age, as of summer of 2024, who's going to come in at Arsenal and take us to that next level. I think Evan Ferguson would also be really good. But I think Victor Osimhen is more ready for the top level. He's played Champions League and played some big games as well. So I think he would be a top signing in that regard. But we'll have to wait
There's
and see.
there's
Sorry?
also one more problem with Evan Ferguson, which is you'd be signing him from an English club, right? Whereas,
That's
I know Napoli are not the most
notorious.
easy club to deal with in the transfer market, but
Mhm.
I think Osimhen, considering the fact that I think he has 18 months left on his deal,
Yeah.
so he'll have a year left by the summer, which is when I imagine we'll go in for him. At that point, you can knock the price down to something we can live with. But I think with Brighton, we saw what they did to Chelsea the last few times, where they just basically extorted
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So I think if we come knocking and asking for Evan Ferguson, who they know is going to be an elite striker one day,
Mhm.
who's tied down for a while, they're going to ask us for crazy money, especially if he gets like 15 plus goals this season. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why he's a little bit further down my wish list personally.
Yeah. I understand that, but I also think maybe the prices are a bit similar. Like, I think Osimhen, as you mentioned, and as Freddie mentioned as well, like every top six club more or less are going to be in for him. You're going to have maybe Real Madrid coming if they don't get Mbappe. You're going to have all the teams in Europe in for him because he's probably the hottest striker in the market. So I'm not sure even if 1 year being left on his deal is going to have that much impact. I'm sure it'll have some impact because Napoli are under some level of pressure to sell. But due to the sheer demand and the sheer financial might of the teams that would be interested in him, I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
really
true.
sure. Brighton, on the other hand, I think they have set valuations for their players, and I think both Evan Ferguson and Osimhen are going to be very similarly priced, like something above 110 million. I think it go up to 120 as well. And yeah, any team that's willing to go that much ends up getting them. And I think that's just the reality of the market today. There's not so many top strikers. So the two biggest striking prospects, I think they're going to go for big money. And that's why I think if we're not able to do it, someone like Vlahovic for 60, 70 million would be a brilliant deal. But yeah, let's see if that materializes.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, my last question to you is about the upcoming January transfer window. Obviously, bigger picture talk is good. We understand the direction we're going in. But let's get to this season. After seeing Kai Havertz's recent performances, and by recent, I mean the last couple of games, has your mind changed a bit on maybe Arsenal? Maybe we don't need a central midfielder immediately, and we address that in the summer. I'm going to ask you a very straight question. We have 50
Sure.
million to spend in January, right? What I'm not asking you about the player, and you can only sign one player.
Hmm.
What position do you throw that 50 million on? It's that simple.
Center back.
Center back. Okay. And what?
Or center back or six.
You can't say that. You have to pick one. You can't say this
Okay,
or
okay,
that.
okay, okay,
One.
okay. I have to pick one. Yeah, center back.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I
why
think
would
I'd
you
go for
pick a
center back.
center back over a six? What is your rationale for that?
I think Party will eventually be back, and the way I'm hoping this plays out is that he'll come back and that it's one of those things where in my head it's like he's missed so much time, right? He can't keep missing time, right? At least this season, over the course of his career, he could keep doing it, but like he's already going to have missed like half the season by the
True.
time he comes back, right? So he should be logically, if we're regressing to the mean here,
Yeah.
available for just a few months. Like we just can you give me a few more months, Thomas, is what I'm asking for here. But so when he comes back, you have him and Rice and Jorginho, El Neni, if you want to count him, right? So you've got some options at six, and I think it's just a little crowded once you get one more guy in there, right?
Mhm.
But at center back, right? Particularly at right center back, it's Saliba, and then who else in January, right? I mean, for most
Did
of the
you see the
season,
reports of Rob Holding coming back in January yesterday from Palace? According to the ever reliable Rohan, he's a top source from the Midlands. He has all the insight on Arsenal. So
Oh
yeah,
man, my favorite part of that was Crystal Palace fans believing it and getting mad.
that was hilarious.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rohan enjoyed that too. But yeah, so Tomiyasu's gonna go
yeah.
play for Japan in January. And then that leaves
Thomas
White by
Partey is also
himself.
going to not be that. Isn't that the Cup of Nations in January as well?
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Well,
not
it's
going
like
to
when
be.
people are saying, "Oh, we'll have Party back in January." No, we won't.
No.
He'll be training in full for 2 days, and then he's gonna hop on a plane to Ghana.
And then he's going to get
Um,
injured in the first training session, and it's all over.
I can already see it. Group stage,
Yeah.
Someone just comes in with the most wild tackle. Party like
Right.
tears his ACL. We'll see. Um, but yeah, I think especially in that January February time period, right? You're gonna have Timber apparently coming back in February. At least that seems to be the noises around the situation, right? So I'm
Yeah.
not as concerned about right back, but at center back, it's Saliba and then no one, right?
Mm. Mm.
Obviously you could shuttle White into that right center back role, but then who are you playing at right back? Cedric? No, thank you.
No,
Um,
please, no.
yeah. Honestly, if we are ever in that kind of position, go get Ruel Walters. I'm not sure
Oh
how
my
good
God,
Ruel
please,
Walters.
please, no. This happens every season where we have a crisis and people are saying play Ruel Walters and
No,
boring
I'm not.
Mikel Arteta would not do such a thing.
I'm not saying play. I'm not saying like make Walters like part of the first team. I'm just saying if I have to pick between Cedric and Walters, play Walters. but
Yeah.
but yeah, the point I'm making here is that there really isn't anyone in that right center back position behind Saliba,
Hmm.
and I think what did us in last season is Saliba went down, and unfortunately Tomiyasu is down as well, and we didn't have anyone reliable who could come in and play that way. So if I had 50 million, I would go after someone. I have a feeling we're going to go after Diomande in
Hmm.
January. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think no matter what happens in January, we're going to sign a defender.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's an interesting way of looking at it, but I think I've suffered from too much PTSD from recent seasons that I don't want to put everything with into Thomas Partey being fit at a key point in the season. Like
Yeah,
I just don't want to do that personally. Um, but I would also actually go in another direction here. Forget Thomas Partey. If I could get a hybrid type player who can play 6 and 8, like Zubimendi, that type of player, I would absolutely go and do it because I think that's the profile that we need. Someone like Declan Rice. And I know someone like Declan Rice, there's not many like Declan Rice,
yeah,
but someone who can play six and can play, I wouldn't say as a pure eight, but as sort of that hybrid type player who can, offer the bridge between the holding midfielder and Odegaard, that type of player. And I think
yeah,
Zubimendi is a very interesting player in that regard. Whether Arsenal end up going for him or not is a different story, but I think he looks a very interesting player, and that is what I would do as of today. But let's see how things pan out. There's always chances that things could change, and every week we are learning something new about the squad. And I'm sure by the end of this month, getting into December tomorrow, by the end
yeah,
of December, we'll have a better idea, I think, of where things are.
yeah. And I do just want to add because basically when you were describing that player, I think a lot of people are going to hear that and think of Douglas Luiz,
Yeah, him as
and
well. Actually, I wouldn't mind him. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind him, but I don't think we're going to get him
no,
because I think Villa are going to ask for 70 million, and that's just not
no.
what we're going to pay for a guy like Douglas Luiz. So,
I
so
think
for
we would
anyone
pay
listening,
70
yeah,
million. I think we would pay 70 million. I honestly believe Arsenal would pay 70 million.
really,
I believe that. But I don't think Villa are going to ask for 70 million. I think they're going to ask for something way more than that to completely price Arsenal out because he's such a key player for them. And they're also
yeah,
trying to build a project. But if I'm Villa, I would sell Douglas Lewis because they have talent coming up in that position. Someone like Tielemans can play, Jacob Ramsey with a surname like that, you're bound to be a top box to box player. So honestly, I think Villa will be fine, and I think selling Douglas Lewis might not be the worst idea. I'm also a huge fan of him actually, starting to appreciate his game even more than I did before. I think he would be a good signing, uh, personally. But let's see.
he's a very good player. But yeah, I think Villa are going to price us out
Yeah,
pretty comfortably there.
yeah. And Zubimendi is just a release clause, so we can go like how we go on deadline day to the La Liga headquarters, pay the release clauses, get the player, and come back home. So
That was
yeah,
a fun
let's
day.
see. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that we can call it there.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was good to be back with you guys, and yeah, just really feel good time at Arsenal right now. Sorry.
Absolutely, I said absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I just yeah, future feels bright. We're doing the business. We're not choking in certain moments. Like,
Hmm.
we're all kind of traumatized enough to expect at this point. And yeah, so, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for listening and being here with us to talk about the Arsenal. And we will be back this coming weekend after the Wolves
There's,
match.
there's no Champions League next week, is it right?
No, no, there's not. Yeah.
Then
So
we can be back this weekend. That'll be good.
yeah. So we'll be back after the Wolves match then to chat about hopefully another win, hopefully a comfortable win. And until then, we're working on getting some videos up on the site for you, working on putting up some more content. I've got the This Week in Arsenal special report coming out either tomorrow or on Monday, and that will be about us and our relationship with the Premier League refereeing. So you don't want to miss that. And yeah, so we'll be around, and yeah, just thanks again for being with us, and we will talk to you hopefully again after a comfortable Wolves win. I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. He's Sash. You can follow him on Twitter at LT Arsenal. You can follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers. And yeah, we'll see you. So take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.